All right, so before we hop into the questions, what I want to do is I want to give you a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself
Okay.
and give a little bit of your background.
Okay, great.
So,
Well, as you know, my name is Maris Blair, and I am running for the Texas State House Representative, District 15. A couple things about me. I'm a former educator. I was a school teacher. Therefore, I'm very much a public school system advocate. Education is very, very close to my heart. And there's a lot of education issues out there that still need to be resolved and that need to be worked on. And there's always going to be education issues. And I think with my background, I can help work towards, reforming some of the parts that need help on. I am now an 18-year attorney, and I practice here locally. I just a lot of things with making laws, the application of laws as a legislator. I think as an attorney, I can bring, something to the table and work with that. And importantly, in this area, I fought long and hard against incorporation. But it wasn't just for the Woodlands that's important for. It's important for everybody in the district because that does impact everybody. But the thing is, when you go against a bigger government and higher taxes, that's what I stand for. 100% against bigger government and higher taxes. So with the Woodlands, incorporation was that. And I fought with the team, and I'm still going to continue fighting that. But everywhere else in the district, it means other things with the Texas property taxes, the tax system. Yes, property taxes are here. I don't know if you can just abolish them and replace them with something. I don't have a plan B, and I haven't seen a plan B that will work. No, you can't do a state income tax. They figured that out. But there's other taxes. It means you're going to add more government and you're going to have higher taxes. So my position on that is across the board on that. And then, like I said, I'm a big advocate for the public school system. I helped support the Conroe ISD school bond that passed. I think that's very, very important. As some people say, we need seats for butts. There's a lot of kids in Conroe ISD, and they needed some place to be educated. They had to have a seat. They had to have a desk. So, between that and being a conservative consensus builder, I think, I bring that to the table. There's no one more conservative than me in this race, but I'm a consensus builder. I work with everybody around in the community. I will work with legislators, and I will work with the governor. We have to work with the governor. Do I support and agree 100%? Do I agree 100%? No, but am I going to support the governor? Yes, I will, because that is our governor. And that's part of the whole legislative process. I'm not going to work against the governor. So that's a little bit about me, where my stands are, what I believe, and what I bring to the table, and how I will be a representative.
all right, so I want to start with education. Some people have had some issues, obviously, with CRT in the schools and just overall the curriculum being taught in the school districts. What are you going to do to help give parents a sense of input and control into these and a balanced curriculum?
Right. Well, the thing is, one thing to be aware of, that the governor and the legislators have already spoken about that. And they're going to have to continue, yes, because there's always going to be something spinning off from that. And I totally support banning any type of teaching hatred. And the thing, as I said, when I was a school teacher, you have to teach history. You can't ignore history, and you can't change history. And people who ignore the history and change history are people who are going to make the same mistake that was made in the past. So you've got to put it out there. But do you teach hatred and do you teach guilt for people today for something in the past? No, but we're making history now. And I'm really proud of the legislation and the legislators there in Austin and the governor for stepping up and being a state that's started abolishing and banning that type of teaching. Now, is there going to be more coming? Of course, because every day with everything going on in society, there are education issues that are new, and they're going to evolve into being called something else, or they're going to be involved in something else. And you've got to basically stick to that traditional base of teaching and of education. You and I were taught education. We were taught history. We were taught math. And that's what we have to continue doing.
Now with education comes funding for that public education. Typically, the largest portion of a property tax bill is school districts.
Mhm.
So what will you do to help provide enough funding for quality public education while trying to ease the burden on taxpayers?
Well, I fully support that we have to fund. Nothing's free. Education's not free, police force is not free, firefighters, EMTs, but mainly the main portion is the school of our tax bill. And every legislative session, the legislators and the governor try to work on reform. And there's some that comes out a little bit at a time. And they're working towards it where you can give a little bit more relief. But at the same time, it's holding these school districts accountable and fiscally responsible. And I really think Conroe ISD is a role model for that. When you look at their breakdown and you look at that school bond passage that passed in 2019, there was no increased tax burden from that school bond. And it was big. But they did such a good job managing and being responsible with that debt. That's the role model of being accountable with taxpayers' dollars. And they are recognized with many awards around the state of being, fiscally responsible, fiscal responsibility and all that. And they're a role model. Now, do they have some work to do? Yes, they do. They're not perfect, but they are a role model. And I think if we can get all the school districts to stand up and have that fiscal accountability, that's going to help with some of the tax burden.
Let's talk about mobility. South Montgomery County and in the Woodlands in particular is a fairly built out community. However, it is smack dab in between Harris County and Montgomery County, which are two very large and growing areas.
Right.
What are you going to do to work with TxDOT and local leaders to ensure proper mobility through your district?
Well, one of the things was, with that road bond passage, there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of parted views on it, but we still have to have infrastructure to support our growth. And we are growing. And, our area is a fast growing area and we have to keep up with that. And the thing is, I work with the local leaders on other projects, but, it's nothing new for me to work with local leaders to try to achieve that common goal, which would be to keep mobility with the growth and working with TxDOT and keeping a relationship on that, because it's coming. It's already here and it's even going to get worse. And so that is a issue that, taxpayers have to realize it's here. But using that money wisely, again, that's the whole key. It's not just a free handout, free payday. You've got to have the fiscal responsibility of every penny being properly spent. And, it costs money to add the rows, but at the same time, using it wisely.
Now you've spoken to, working with the governor and other legislatures in order to pass needed legislation on these issues. How are you going to, work with the other districts in order to accomplish that goal?
Well, that's a part that I'm really proud of, and I'm promoting a lot of what I bring to the table is a conservative consensus builder. That is my passion. That's how I've worked. That's how I was as a school teacher. That's how I am as an attorney. And that's what I do in my job daily is, bringing people and we work through the issues. We talk through the issues. And being District 15 is a very powerful district in Texas. I mean, it is of what is encompassed in that district. So changes that make issues with us affect everybody else. And same thing, other legislators, what changes they're trying to make affect District 15. So being a consensus builder and working with other legislators, of course, as you do with your senators, that's part of your everyday duty to the voters if you're elected to be a representative. But at the same time, I represent the people in the district. What are their needs, wants, what are the issues, and being tapped into that and not just focusing on a small special group. It is a big district. So I've got to look at how it affects everybody.
Now it is a big district with a lot of people in it. So how are you going to be present and be available to the voters and constituents to help them?
Well, I'm pretty much already out there now anyway. I go to events, I go to other things that are going on in the community. You can take part in forums and tap into groups. I'm already doing that, and I've been doing that. So, I just need to keep on with that and expand on that even more. But I want to always be to where somebody can email me, call me, hey, we have an issue, and then start gathering the facts. But the thing is to gather those facts, to analyze them, and then talk through them with everybody, not just take off on your own. It takes a team, and part of that team to make changes is with the constituents in the district. Every person is a constituent that lives here, and that's part of the team.
Now, another hot topic recently has been voter integrity. We're coming into another big election cycle, particularly the bills that have been passed related to mail-in ballots.
Yes.
And there has been a high rejection rate. However, this also puts election centrals in a difficult position of understanding how to handle these new rules. What will you do to help make these rules clear and while strengthening our election systems?
Well, voter integrity is even going to become more of an issue. We thought it was an issue in the past. It's getting worse because we do have open borders. So that changes of how we're looking at it again in another election cycle. So voter integrity is a top priority. It is a top issue, and some have already started on that, but there's still a lot of work to be done. It's amazing what you have to show voter ID or an ID for these days to do a lot of things. Sometimes even purchase something with your credit card, to file certain things in the real property records, to get married, a lot of different things. But you don't have to show it to vote. Is there something that Texas can do to make it easier for a identification card with a photo? But at the same time, just eliminating that and saying, well, if you're a registered voter and you can file a declaration that you can't get a photo ID, but I can show a copy of a utility bill, you've got a little bit of some wiggle room, a little bit of gray area there. And then helping the local central, election central, they also got to understand the intent behind the law. Look at the report, sit down with them, because there was a lot of testimony that went in and very edits, a lot of edits and revamping of those bills until they got passed. It wasn't just here it is and it passed. There's a lot of intent back there that's behind the legislative words that you've got to also explain when it's kind of muddy and unclear. And next legislative session, there's going to be a lot more laws on that, because it is a priority, and I think it's a priority, and so does the governor, and so do other legislators. But it also stems from other issues, and the open border is one of them. The open border is the hot topic that leads to many other crises, which is voter fraud. That's one contributing factor there, and there's many others with an open border. So
now up here in Montgomery County and in your district, HD 15, people may question why is the border should be such an issue, should be something you should focus on. So why is it important to direct efforts to the border, and for that to be one of your priorities as well?
Well, the crisis on the Texas border, we're just going to narrow it down to the Texas border, affects every district in Texas. And it affects us too, because we're pretty much closer to the border. So when you have an open border, many things locally happen. One, we could have a higher rate and potentially of voter fraud. Two, it really, really, really puts a burden on the local school districts for public education, because you got to supply more basically seats for the butts. They are people that are right now not paying taxes. I mean, you've got a whole issue coming, that how it burdens them, and it burdens our cities. It burdens the police force. It really burdens, because you have an influx of people that are looking to try to feed themselves. I mean, it's just, it creates a crisis there and puts burdens on infrastructures. And then it also really increases the whole cartel and the fentanyl that come through that are, killing our constituents, killing our children. I mean, it's the border, I call it a border catastrophe. It is a catastrophe. And you can list numerous things, and probably not on two hands. There's even more of crises that come out of that catastrophe. And so when you mention certain things like voter fraud and the drug and the cartel, it kind of all bleeds back. You have another issue that's overlying that causes that too. That's not the only reason why we have voter fraud, but that's going to impact it. Yes.
Now, over the past 2 years, there's been a lot of criticism over the handling of the pandemic as well, the lockdowns, and there were some calls for the legislature to be called back during the height of the pandemic in order to begin enacting the will of the citizens instead of these executive orders. Would you have supported that, or what do you think would have been the best course of action?
Well, the thing is, it's easy for us to say now and look back. Oh, we would have done this differently, or I would have done that differently. But you don't know until that day you are handed a medical diagnosis for the people saying this is how many people are going to die. It's easy to take blame now. The point is we look at it now and go forward. So I'm not going to go back and criticize people for what they did in the past, because I think the ones that we had to follow did the best they could do with what they were given. Now, looking today, what we know now, yeah, things might have been done differently, but I'm not going to criticize that because it's what we're going to do from today forward. And that's what's going to impact the citizens. You can't change the past. It's history. We talked about that. But what are you going to do not to repeat history once you learn about it? So, and if what goes forward, like I said, I'm here to support the legislators and the governor. I'm not going to work against the governor, and I'm not going to sue the governor. Because that's not going to help anybody.
In our area, which is growing, our law enforcement is also facing more challenges with providing the level of safety that many have come to expect and take for granted in some ways. What are you going to do as a legislator to ensure the needs of law enforcement are met at the local level?
Well, first of all, thank goodness, majority of Texas, I say, is totally against defunding the police. That is just not the route I would ever go. I am more for, we have got to give them what they need to adequately protect the people and themselves and to do their jobs safely. And I support the police 100%. So there's many things, there's really no easy answer, because there's always going to be something, but what is it that I can do with working with the local cities and their funding and other things? And is there something that the state can do also? But to defund them, no, but to pass laws, which the governor started issuing and mandating with the legislators, you can't defund the police. It's just not an automatic. So that was the first step. Now we got to figure out how to still support them. And basically that still comes down to a lot to the local entities, but I'm here to work with the local entities. And if that's priority, then that's going to be a priority for me.
Are there any other particular priorities you have going into another legislative session if you're elected?
Just, working on what reforms that need to be out there with the voter fraud, voter integrity, public school system, the property tax system. There's a lot of work to be done. Not saying, things are perfect. They're not, and they're never going to be perfect. But things change, and boy, has the economy and society and local issues, they have changed in 2 years. I mean, it all took a little hard swing at us. So now let's work forward. What is it that we need? What is it that we got to do? And like I said, some of it is with the property tax reform. And that's not just basically on just the individual entities and their tax rate. It also goes back to other things. There's appraisal, which are two separate items, but one creates the other. So, there's always going to be issues, unfortunately. But I'm here to listen, tap into them, and work as a team to kind of figure out a resolution and start taking one by one.
All right. Is there anything else you would like the citizens to know about you, your campaign, or the office?
Well, like most people know, like now I said, was a former educator. I'm an attorney. I'm a devoted Christian. My faith guides my decisions every day, and for my decisions for myself, my family, and my community. I take that very strong. I pray many, many times over guidance. And at the same time, I think that helps me with the integrity. If I'm bringing integrity as a representative to District 15. I want people, when they think of District 15, I want the constituents in District 15, legislators in Austin, and everybody to first thought, oh, District 15, integrity. That's what we are, and that's what we bring as a whole.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blair, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you taking interest in my campaign. So thank you.
Thank you.